As the events progress, the heat turns up. In this case, it's quite literal. Drivers will need to try their best to keep their cool at the Brickyard as we get ready for the PCA Sim Racing Series 14 Club Class. You'll see it all live here on RaceSpot TV. I am Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Ron Mons. Behind the scenes is our director, Hugo Louise. We're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. We are 2 events down now, Ron, and we are into the thick of the season.
Oh, that we certainly are. And to get into the thick of it, we're here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a track that is always a bit of a tough one, despite the fact that it doesn't have a lot of elevation change on this road oval circuit, the only one that we'll be visiting throughout this season. It is still a rather technical track, originally built back in 2000 to host a Formula One United States Grand Prix. It's now been shuffled around a little bit over the years, the current configuration that we're running on, most recently used by IndyCar and also used by IMSA every single year as well. This track has, even though it was originally designed for open wheelers, it does have a lot of sports car heritage in its rather short history. Of course, IMSA races here, a litany of other sports car races, and the SCCA National Championship runoffs were held here a couple of years ago as well. So this track, a little bit of a happy hunting ground for sports car fans.
It is, which is not what you've expected considering the heritage of this place, but glad to see it. It does put on a really good show. Now, you see a lot of ties in these standings for your top 10. That is because they have drop weeks, at least one drop week in Series 14. So if 2 different drivers have finished in one position, they're obviously going to wind up tied on points, as we see Cowley and Doran both with wins up there. Heimbucher, Gibson both have finished second place, and Martin and Neville have both finished in third so far. Gerbino, Streltsov also tied along with Gregory and Bowers. We'll see that start to shift around a little bit more as the races go on, and the drop week no longer creates ties, but instead may create some major differences as drivers are able to look past their worst results. We're into the final 2 minutes now of qualifying. And it looks like Ryan Cowley, who managed to take that win last time out at Watkins Glen, is on that provisional pole by 0.02 of a second.
As we usually expect here in the PCA world, the margins in this qualifying session so incredibly close. You look at that gap between P3 and P4, Mike Matson and Steve Komatz, only 0.03 of a second. You look at the gap between P1 and P2, 23 thousandths. Everybody is so closely tight-knit. I mean, when you think about the racing action that plays out in real life here at this track, especially at the IndyCar qualifying sessions every single May before the Indy 500, those sessions and this track kind of known for being really, really close. Some of the smallest margins that you see throughout the entire IndyCar season for qualifying come here at this track. And here we're probably going to see some of the tightest margins that we see all season long. It's a track that a lot of people can take to like a duck to water with not a lot of elevation change. It certainly does have its challenges, and one of them, of course, being the weather that we will most certainly be talking about throughout tonight. But this racetrack, all in all, it's one that really lends itself to the field just being packed in like sardines.
Absolutely. And with Peter Coomer taking that lap, he's the last of the drivers able to set a lap. You talked about the heat. I mean, they have turned it up. It's going to be about 120 degrees Fahrenheit or thereabouts on the track surface. But when that sun is relentless, your sunscreen should be too. Mo Hansom's new sports sunscreen spray is now available. It's SPF 30, broad spectrum, and reef safe. Plus, this spray is water resistant for up to 80 minutes. It's even TSA travel sized and made into the USA. This protecting spray is perfect for 120-degree Indy track surfaces, and to prove it, tonight's driver of the hottest lap in qualifying will receive a 2-pack of Mo Hansom Sport Sunscreen Spray. Learn more at their Instagram at Mo Hansom Skin and at their website, mohansom.com/sunscreen. Looks like Ryan Cowley, as things sit right now, is going to be coming home with a little bit of suntan lotion himself to try and keep the sun off of him next time he goes outside. But we'll see if he can stand the heat out there on track, Ron, because like you said, it is very tight up at the top.
Yeah, super tight knit. This race that we have ahead going to be one with very fine margins, and that runoff down into turn number 1, it is rather, this track is notorious for being one where the run down into turn number 1 can be, I'm trying to think of the most genteel way that I can put this. Horrifying, I think, would be the best. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a kerfuffle. It is horrifying for some racers heading off into that part of the racetrack. That's part of what gives this track a little bit of charm, and we'll be able to get a good view of that as we ride on board with Ryan Cowley, your pole sitter for this race. Walked away with the victory at Watkins Glen last time and looks to carry the momentum here into round number 3. As we see him head off into turn number 1, you can see that very big inside curve that is super tough to try and find the right balance in terms of hitting that. It's a sports car. You can hit it, but at the same time, there is a little bit of a mistake that you can make if you hit a little bit too hard off through turn number 4 right now. Onto the back flat apples of this racetrack. Had this quick little chicane to really keep you on your toes. One of the modifications made once IndyCar made their home here back in 2014. Now down the Holman straightaway, as they like to call it, down off into turn number 7. A very good overtaking opportunity in this race that lies ahead. One of the heaviest braking zones, a nice tight corner. You got another one of those anti-cut curbs on the inside, though, so be a little bit careful all through there. Now you're escaping the infield section very briefly as you head your way through the oval turn number 2, the infield of oval turn number 2, all through 10 and 11 on this road course, down into turn number 12, into this infield section that was added in after the kerfuffle that went on during the 2005 United States Grand Prix. This infield chicane section can be another section of racetrack where these drivers get a little bit tightly knit, and now as you head your way off through turn number 14, the final turn around this track, it's rather tough trying to get on the throttle off through that part of the circuit. Really doesn't matter what car you're in, that is always going to keep these racers on their toes. Indianapolis is a sort of racetrack where even with long flat out blasts, the drivers really don't have a lot of times to be comfortable.
Yeah, it is not that long of a lap here, and Ryan Cowley made the best of it, taking that pole position. Kellen Heimbucher will be starting next to him on the front row. It's Mike Madsen in P3, followed by Steve Komatz in P4, and then Mark Foley starts 5th, flanked by Mark Doran there in 6th position. After that, you've got Robert Neville starting from 7th, as John Gibson will be P8, Greg Streltsov in 9th. He looked very strong in practice, couldn't back that up with qualifying. Mark Rondeau rounds out the top 10 next to him. Jason Barnett will then be in 11th. Jake Gerbino will be on the outside of that 6th row. Marcel Eunice starts in 13th. You've got Dean Chapman next to him in 14th. Nathan Abuhaka then P15. And the 222 of Peter Sigourney starts in 16th position. From there, J.R. Gregory starts in P17, along with Aaron Sunday starting in 18th. Row number 10 sees Dale Green starting 19th and Scott Bowers in 20th. Andy Jenks will be P21 with Jeremy Hall on his outside in 22nd. Mehmet Karachai will be P23. Dennis Lynn then starts in the 24th position as we see the quarter-century mark go to Kevin Schultz. After that, it's David Snelling in 26th, Patrick Adamczyk in 27th, and Anthony Carbone Jr. in 28th. Peter Krumer will be on the inside of the 15th row with Chad Casion next to him to round out the top 30. A lot of cars here today, so next few sees Charlie Ferrer in 31st, Rex Girwall 32nd, and then Richard Woodruff in 33rd. Devin Hopkins will join him on that row in 34th. Chris Sherburne then starts on the inside of the next row. He's got Christian Braun in the 36th position next to him. Last few has Kenneth Eskridge in 37th. Charlie Boyer, one of only 2 drivers failing to set a lap, and Jonathan Reber being the other one, starting 39th. We had fewer cars last time, so one of the things that I wonder about is, since we saw some lap traffic through various parts of the race last time, this is a short lap, Ron. Will we see even more tonight, and will it play a factor in the win?
Oh, I think it most certainly will on both aspects. As you just mentioned, this track is definitely on the shorter end, both in terms of lap times and distance. And as much as you do have some very good overtaking opportunities around here, there's also parts of this racetrack where you can be a little bit boxed in by lap traffic. So you got to time it when exactly you catch up to that lap car. We saw a little bit of it last time out of Watkins Glen. If you're able to get that move done on the lap cars in very specific parts of the racetrack, you would come out of all that, smell like a bed of roses, and be able to pull some gaps on the cars around you. However, here it's kind of like you get that situation lap traffic wise at Watkins Glen, you crank it up a couple notches, and you've got this race here at Indy. Plus, with those tire temperatures, probably going to make sure these racers are sliding around from the start all the way through to the finish. This may be a rather tough race that lies ahead for these competitors.
Well, and let's talk about those tire temperatures because, we doubted this track tends to have that long run down into turn one. We thought surely there's good opportunities to try and pass, but there are a lot of drivers that were warning, no, it's very difficult. So we had a strange race unfold last night as Ewan and I watched cars go crazy with tons of aggressive passes in the first couple laps, and then suddenly everybody went single file on, and the passing disappeared. So it does seem like having the grip in these tires in the early stages is a critical part to getting track position. We'll see if it bears fruit again tonight, if it winds up playing out the same, but I'm expecting that a lot of drivers will be watching last night and will be even more eager to try and get by their rivals.
See, I'm trying to think of how exactly the phrase would work, because basically what it is, it's a cold version of strike while the iron is hot. Make sure you get the moves done before the tires get too hot. Drink that slushy before it all melts is basically what we've got going on. These tires, they're going to be feeling soft. They're going to be feeling a little bit too soft. At the start of this race, they're still going to be in their perfectly round, regular form with very sticky rubber all around it to stick to this racetrack to make sure they can get the maximum amount of performance as they can. However, as we get a little bit farther along in this race, those tires are probably going to melt into small little black puddles around this racetrack, and you don't need to be an engineer, a physicist, you don't need to work at a tire manufacturing plant to know that a tire works better when it's a tire, not just a puddle of rubber. I remember from my own karting days driving in very hot, very greasy conditions. At the opening part of the run that I would do back in my autocross days, the kart would feel great. It would feel fantastic. At the end of the run, it would feel like I was a dog on a freshly polished wood floor trying to run away. So these racers may have to worry about that all throughout today.
Without a doubt. And you know what happens, though, if you try to chug that slushy too quickly, you could get brain freeze. So you do have to be careful. You don't want to drink from the fire hose out here. You want to make some calculated moves at the start. And Cowley is going to be starting on the inside on that pole position as he waits for the call from the flag stand to get going down into turn one. Green. There it is now. Green flag is out. Did look like a pretty good start there for Komatz from third, and he's already going to try and make it 3 wide as he pops out to the left-hand side for the lead, coming down into the first corner. Look at the cars fanning out. They know this is going to be critical as it narrows up here into this first corner, and already it's looking like we might have problems unless everybody is on their tiptoes coming through here. One car actually cuts to the inside, and amazingly, we get through without any cars being turned, but Komatz leads.
And now we still have some bottlenecking sections here all through 3 and 4. Now about to head our way off into the 5 and 6 chicane. This part of the racetrack is single file on a good day. If you try and go side by side off through there, it's going to end poorly as that's a spinner. Multiple drivers spearing off the track as they head their way onto the backstretch.
Looks like Adam Schick, I think, involved. Rondeau potentially out there that's been caught up in it. Cars trying to get themselves moving. They do have a spare car waiting in pit lane if they need it, while we still get some side-by-side battles down into turn 7. And we got another car spinning right in the middle of the racing line, which makes everybody scatter. Now we're going to be hopping on board a few of them towards the latter end of the pack, trying to avoid the craziness. This is definitely not as clean as we saw in the first lap over in the pro class.
Yeah, that was Robert Neville with the spin off through the tight twisties on the infield section. Very lucky that the driver of the 087 car was able to get back up and rolling without both losing out on any single spot that he held on to and also holding on to a semi-clean race car. But here we go, side by side, racing up at the front. These racers really want to strike while the iron is still not too hot.
And it looks like Cowley is going to get that lead back. I have to say, I'm impressed with Komatz going from fourth to first, and it is a chain reaction going backwards as Komatz and Cowley made slight contact, and Heimbucher got into him, and Matson also punched a hole in the rear bumper of the number 19. It looks like they'll all get away with it, but they're going to hope that they don't have damage on the nose or the tail of the cars as we got more problems out of one.
Yeah, that's Peter Sigourney involved in all of that. Not sure who the driver that was spun off in that nearly made contact with the 222 car as they tried to get back up and rolling, as that's a spin again off into turn number 4.
Trying to make out who that is. It looks like Aaron Sunday, who gets turned around, falls all the way to 36th position. I thought that we'd have some drivers be a little bit more aggressive today, but my goodness, there have been some ill-fated moves already out here as we once again come back to our leaders. Cowley ahead of Komatz still, Heimbucher in second, and Matson in third. And this is what kicked off all the craziness down out of the chicane of 5 and 6 as the 011 seems to have just gotten a little bit loose, and everybody behind maybe trying to react to that.
And I didn't really mention it in the track guide that I did right after qualifying a little bit earlier on in this broadcast, but part of what makes that chicane section so tough is we see what sent Robert Neville off into a spin off through turns number 8 and 9. I think he had a slight little tap in the back of the car, but what makes that chicane section onto the back straightaway so incredibly tough is the weight transfer. These cars don't really respond too well with quick changes of weight, as we see Mark Doran, while the driver's involved in that spin with himself, and Peter Sigourney coming out of turn number 2. That backstretch chicane, the weight transfer that goes on through there, if you could see kind of, I think there's some other games that really show off kind of the center of pressure, the center of weight and all that stuff, and how it shifts off through the racetrack. If you could see that heading off through that section, no matter what car it is, it just goes all over the place. Every single spot of the car where the weight doesn't want to be is where the weight usually ends up, which makes that section so tricky to manage, especially at the start of one of these races with everybody packed in so tightly.
Coming back to John Gibson in the 911 machine, sitting in 8th place right now. That's Mark Foley in front of him, who is trying to defend P7. And coming down into the braking of turn 12. A little bit of a look to the inside from Gibson, but decides against it as he's not close enough to make that pass stick. Although he's much tighter to the inside of the corner compared to what we're seeing with Foley. He tries to get the wheels underneath himself once again, and it does look like he has pulled away from John Gibson onto the critical main straight.
Yeah, and as we see these racers head their way down into turn number 1, I was expecting turn 1 to be a bit more of a source of drama as we see a driver sliding coming out turn number 14, going to impact the inside wall. Just as I was talking about a little bit earlier on in the show, Anthony Carborn Jr. proving exactly what I was warning about, trying to get on the power as you turn your way out of turn number 14, especially as you slam your way back up onto the banking, coming through what is oval turn 1. And the final turn around this track, super tough to nail down as a 333 car. Going to capitalize on that opportunity. The 16 car still trying to get his bearings straight. Of all the turns around this racetrack, certainly pretty much all of them have their own unique challenge. But in my book, turn number 14, the final turn around here, very challenging, probably the most challenging for that exact reason. Trying to get on the power heading off through there is such a tough ask.
And as you can see, Gibson did manage to get by Foley. Just had a good slipstream down into turn 1. Managed to get it done through 1 and 2. Took him a little bit. And Jared Gregory is going to take a little bit to recover, unfortunately, as he eventually gets the 218 back onto the circuit and stops the bleeding from cars sneaking by. So we're seeing a bit of action here, but will it start to dry up like we had before? As this is what put Jared Gregory off the course. He's fighting side by side. Is there any contact here, Ron? Oh, yep, there it is.
And it's similar to how turn 1 can usually end in a drama like that. Turn 7 can end exactly the same way. One thing about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course that as much as I adore IndyCar racing, I've seen it many, many times, and even in most certainly in sports car races running around here like this one certainly is. You've got sections of this track that bottleneck. You go from a decent amount of lanes down to probably about half of that. Turn 1, a pretty big example of all that. Back when the NASCAR Cup Series still ran here on the road course, you saw that every single time there was a restart down to turn 1, they could go 5 wide, and then they had to bottleneck it. And even going side by side all through there, considering the infield grass that sticks as you had your way down to turn number 2, definitely sticks as. Look at Dean Chapman going for a dive down to turn number 7. That is not going to work out, as he is going to slip back right beyond Jason Barnett. It was a gutsy move, don't get me wrong. You kind of have to go for a dive off in there, say, you know what, I'm gonna just send it off into the turn 7, though, exactly the same problem as turn 1. It bottlenecks pretty badly through there, so if you get a move done off into turn 7, you got to get it done with a large amount of authority, otherwise it may end a little bit hair-raisingly.
Yeah, he just didn't have the grip to try and make it stick. By the way, Gibson was given a black flag for responsibility with the incident of the 087 of that was ahead of, it was Robert Neville, excuse me. So right at the very beginning of the race, he's been now fallen back down the order and returns to the track just about a lap down from our leaders as we watch the battle coming down into the first corner once again, kind of being led by Abu Haka that we can see in that Roxy colored car there at the front of it. He's being trailed by Foley, Barnett, Chapman, who have been watching battle, and then Bowers is at the end of this train.
And Abu Haka, the central Indiana region driver, looking to impress here at his, was we can imagine is probably his hometown track, as you can see him clobbering the curbs all through that 5 and 6 chicane. This is one of those racetracks where, as much as many a racer can take to it like a duck to water very quickly, I mean, it's been documented in the IndyCar spheres whenever IndyCar qualifying took place, rookies usually tend to do quite well here because this is a track where you can get up to speed rather fast. But this is the sort of racetrack where you can get a lot of speed by just honing in the small little details. May not be the biggest swing in the world, may not be the biggest amount of time gained in the world, but if you can just shave a couple of hundredths, maybe like a tenth or two, maybe even a couple of thousandths in a series like this, which is always so competitive, around a track like this where the margins can be so razor thin, those small little details can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. And coming back onto the main straight, the difference is going to be Barnett getting the pole from Foley in front of him. Will we see the 495 pop out to the inside? There's similarly liveried cars here, as he is going to give a big look, but Foley with a late defense on top of it, trying to keep him from getting to that apex first there at turn 1. So he'll stay in that 8th place. Barnett, I have to imagine, probably didn't take kindly to that late move.
Yeah, probably not. I feel like there's another one of those, talking about the many things that pop up with this racetrack, another thing to raise. I think tensions may be a little bit hot. I don't think the racetrack is the only thing that's going to be hot at the end of this race here this evening. This is just the nature of this circuit lends itself to drivers going for moves that others may see as slightly questionable, for lack of a better term. It happens in real life. The tensions may get a little bit high around this circuit, and I feel like we'll be seeing that a little bit here tonight. There's a black flag actually in the air for Mark Doran in the 486 car.
Interesting. So that was the incident with the 222 car, it looks like, and that was on lap 2. I'm trying to recall. We've had a lot of incidents here at the start. Try and remember amongst these cars. That was Peter Sigourney, apparently, that he had made contact with. So he'll have to come in and serve that shortly as we check back in with Peter Sigourney. This is in the midst of another train, which we saw a lot of last night as well. It seems the difficulty in getting by other cars, Ron, kind of forced these sort of, quote-unquote DRS trains without the DRS.
we'll call them the PCA trains, as they head their way around this racetrack. Had to come up with some analogy to try and put it all into terms for me. Yeah, you do see that running around this racetrack as we have one driver trying to break away from it. Robert Neville going for a dive off into turn number 1, and rather still civil from the both of them. Devin Hopkins really playing ball in that situation. It takes 2 to tango when it comes to battling around this racetrack. Down off into turns number 1 and 2. If you see a side-by-side fight through there, the car on offense has to play ball as much as a car on defense does, and we saw that quite a lot there. I don't think it helped him out too much, as he may be at risk of losing some spots a little bit farther behind around this circuit. If you give a little bit, those racers probably got to smell blood in the water.
Just like we're seeing Kevin Schultz do here, and he almost manages to make it by Hopkins. Is still working on it. Now he goes wide, wheels into the grass coming through turn 8, and so he gets back onto the circuit, but he has definitely lost the racing line. Look at that. He is all out of sorts, and now Peter Krumer is going to be able to take a spot. We got another black flag, J.R. Gregory this time. Incident on lap 4 with the number 29 machine.
And as we see once again, a dive down into turn number 12. This time a little bit unsuccessful as he gets a little bit loose. Steve Komatz in the 210 car has made the call to come down pit lane. That is fascinating. Did I miss a black flag from him, or is he coming in on strategy?
I would think this is maybe a bit too early. It'd be a risky call to go at this point. But I have to say, Kevin Schultz a bit all over the show there for a while. Hopefully he can get things back under control. Got a car going slow down pit lane, or down the inside there. I was trying to make out who that was. But yeah, J.R. Gregory serving a black flag, while other drivers also in for mysterious reasons, as we check in on the 26 machine here.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit perplexed about that call from Steve Komatz to come down pit lane. He's now stopped in his pit stall and spending a decent amount of time down there. 30.6 seconds stopped in the pit stall. Going to be probably about a minute 15 that he spent down in pit lane. And right on cue there, 1:15.7. See, I know a little bit when it comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but no, I gotta say, if he's trying to make that strategy call work on merit, is he trying to go for like a very extended final stint, or is he maybe going to try his hand at a 2-stop?
No, this is clearly not a standard stop, because 31 seconds is well beyond what most of the drivers were doing here. So he must have had either some sort of damage or some extenuating circumstance that forced him down pit lane that we're just not sure about right now. So I think there's something else amiss that we'll try and dig into as we come back to Dean Chapman now in 9th position. He's still sitting in the midst of this train of cars. Barnett at the front of them. Foley just to the nose of this car that we're riding on board with. And then Scott Bowers behind, outside of view, still chasing. Let's see if anybody gets a run coming through the chicane. You can see all the grass they're kicking up as they try to open up that entry as much as possible.
Yeah, the grass shoulders around here. I know that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway landscaping crews, oh no, is heading off down into turn number 7. That's going to be a spin for Mark Foley to take himself out of the top 10. And turn 7 being the trouble spot once again. Side-by-side racing and close quarter stuff can sometimes end in disaster. Unfortunately for Foley, he learned that lesson the hard way down in there. I was just going to say that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway landscaping crews usually don't take too kindly to drivers running off into the dirt. Unfortunately there from Foley, it was, oh yeah, you can see that car right in front of him. Had to check up big time, and nothing that he could have done keeping that momentum rolling. Just had to take the high road and spin the car around.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate. Just caught off guard and tried to slow it up a bit too much, maybe slam those brakes. I want to give some love to the number 7 of Rex Jarawala. He's up 20 positions. And I mean, a few of those might be from those cars that have stopped into pit lane for various reasons, but that's a small amount of them. He's made up most of these by passes or simply staying out of trouble. And here we've got Rex Jarawala's camera as he gives us a very film noir perspective on things.
Yeah, the very dramatic black and white camera. It's been a very dramatic start here at Indianapolis, but a very good one from Rex Jarawala. I gotta say, to pull off that amount of overtakes in the early stages, he's got to be feeling very comfortable in his race car behind the wheel of that number 7 machine. But I will play, what would be the opposite to the devil's advocate here? I don't know, the devil's legal counsel, and say that there may be a little bit of worry about tires with that 7 car as well, because to get a lot of moves done in the early stages of this race, the overtaking opportunities, they are plenty here, but you still have to put a little bit of force into those tires to make it stick. So I wonder if that 7 car may be feeling the burn a little bit later on. We'll have to keep an eye on the lap times of the number 7 car to see whether or not they drop off throughout the rest of the stint.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll watch that just in case, as Gerbino and Stretsov is fighting for 4th position. We're on board with Gerbino, and he's going to get past them before they even get to the apex. I think that Greg just facilitated that one a little bit and allowed the 113 through. Just about just past a quarter of the way through this race already, and it's definitely got a little bit of a different flavor from what we had in the pro class before, but I am seeing a few repeated themes.
Yeah, seeing once again the drivers trying to take it, just absolutely throwing haymakers at each other in the early stages of this race to try and find any way in the book to get past their competition. And certainly the tires already becoming a point of discussion. Jared Gregory once again making the call to come down pit lane. I still think that the pit stop that we saw a little bit earlier on from Steve Komatz may be a tire call. These racers may have to consider it depending on how badly they've been their tires. It certainly would be a heck of a lot of time to lose down in pit lane if you want to take some tires onto your race car. But on the flip side, you're gonna lose a lot of time out there on the racetrack anyways. I'm sure these racers have done plenty of practice, have crunched the numbers well enough to know exactly what the yin versus the yang is when it comes to taking tires. Sure, you're gonna lose time down pit lane, but you will be gaining it out there on the racetrack. The real question is, can you gain enough time out there on the track with a tire advantage to really offset the amount of time that you lose down in the pits, and maybe even gain a little bit if you do decide to make that call. I would try and crunch the numbers myself, but I give myself a headache trying to chew gum and walk at the same time, so I'm not even going to attempt.
Oh, we got a taker on pit lane, Scott Bowers. And again, this is very early. Robert Neville, by the way, also being given a black flag for an incident on lap 2. That was with the 331 of Aaron Sunday. So he's going to get some pain, even though he was on the other end of it with someone else getting a penalty for running into him a little bit earlier. Coming back once again to this battle we've been watching on and off down into the braking of turn 7, also going by some lap traffic. Barnett will keep ahead of Chapman for the time being in that 7th position. They work their way back down onto the oval once again while they've separated. I want to give a really quick mention to Princess Cruises. That's because they're the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. All right, so where did our driver that was just in come back out? That was Scott Bowers, right? Oh, and that was a very fast stop, 9.1 seconds for the 917. Interesting. Meanwhile, battle for 16th position between Sigourney and Jenks, and I think Sigourney is going to come out ahead in that one with that 16th position. Jenks trying to maybe stop the bleeding before Sherburne or Farrer behind him try to pick up on the opportunity.
Ooh, as you can see, running a little bit wide off through turn number 4 as well is Andy Zhang. So dropping that to P19 in the midst of all of that. When it comes to these big trains of cars that we've got around this circuit, if you lose that on a bit of time, if you find yourself either just stuck on the outside when you want to be on the inside, if you make a small little mistake, either miss an apex, get a little bit sideways out of the turn, or whatever it may be, you'll find yourself just dropping down big time. It's like trying to merge onto the highway and there just being a never-ending stream of traffic. No matter what you do, just at all, it's not really going to work out too well for you. You will take a bit of a burning when it comes to all that. So these racers may have to run an even tighter ship than they were expecting to, which is certainly a tough ask considering the track conditions. We touched on them right before the start of this race. While racing once again, air temperature is currently looking at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 32 degrees Celsius. Track temperatures, meanwhile, at 113 degrees Fahrenheit or 45 Celsius. Not the hottest track temperatures that I have ever seen. It wouldn't be the temperatures that you'd be able to cook a steak with, but it's still rather unpleasant. You want to walk around this track barefoot.
That's definitely for sure. But drivers yesterday seemed to manage them decently well. And it's just the loss of the grip makes it very much a one-lane racetrack. We saw a little bit of a battle in front of this group. That was Casion and Foley. Foley, of course, slightly out of position. And there you can see him going very wide off the race line position eventually before Holman Avenue sees him return back to the gripped up line, and he's lost ground on Chad Casion now for that 14th spot. Wonder if I feel like Foley is a prime candidate for trying that early pit stop. Since he's already out of position, you might as well get the pit stop done and get out of the way to get some clear air instead of trying to pass cars here in the mid-pack.
You know, we have seen in the past 2 races here this season, drivers going for the rather off-the-wall strategies, just trying to throw something at the wall to see what can stick with the adverse conditions, with the nature of this track, with the fact that these racers have been struggling to try and get past each other, at least in the case of last night's race and thus far here tonight. I think you're exactly right there, Joe. This may be the event where you can try and throw something a little bit different at the wall, come into the pits a little bit early. Of course, these racers probably have a whole lot of software behind them to try and figure out where exactly they're going to exit out, if they'll find themselves in a small little pocket, a pocket of peace, so to speak. I'm sure these racers have a lot of permutations that they're running through their head, probably some strategies that they intended to go for even before they started this race. But I think for some of them that are maybe behind the agenda a little bit, behind schedule, so to speak, with some drama a little bit earlier on, there's not really too much to lose to say, you know what, I find myself in a lot of action. There's a big pack that I'm in the middle of right now, and my lap times are kind of stagnating. May as well just throw something at the wall to see if it can stick. Even if I lose out on some time, I'm still not running in a very good spot anyways. With how short these seasons are, as much as it does pay to be consistent, it also pays to maybe be a bit of a gambler, roll the dice and see if you can come out with $1 million.
We had a chance to chat with Arthur Chan, who wound up finishing on the podium last night, about that. He was saying that it, didn't seem to really do all that much of a difference if you try to pit early, which I guess does make sense since they generally don't take tires in this series. We can see Mark Doran on the top also has a black flag penalty right now. So it was kind of fascinating that it was more down to, well, are you stuck and do you have an opening, he said, is the biggest part of the question. So those who are paying attention, who have a track map and can see that, might take it if they feel like there's something to be gained in getting clear air. But trying to undercut your rivals just doesn't seem to be enough of an edge. Like you said, though, I do like to see a gambler out there. I want to see somebody roll the dice and do something different to try to shake up the order. We'll see how many more drivers will go early in this race.
See,
There's one right there.
Yep, yeah, there we go. That's Marc Rondeau making the call to come down pit lane. Already had some drama a little bit earlier on in this race, and he's going to say, you know what? Why not? That's a question that I want more racing drivers to ask. Why not? I mean, I would prefer it to be strategy over making it like 4 wide down into turn number 1 and then wiping all the cars off like a game of Porsche bowling. But I gotta say, I'm absolutely with you there, Joe. I would love to see these racers roll the dice and just try and be experimental when it comes to the strategies that they work with. Hey, it gives us something to talk about here in the broadcast booth. We get the opportunity to theorize what these racers may be doing, as Nathan Albuquerque has actually got a come down pit lane in the 958 car. Interesting call from him.
All right, so that's one of the drivers farther up the order, also taking his stop once again. Also, Rondeau's was actually a black flag. That wasn't a pit stop, so he kept on going. He was just serving that penalty. As we come back to the battle that we were watching a little bit earlier here with Greg Streltsoff and Jake Gerbino have been fighting against one another for much of the race. In fact, we're already about halfway through this thing, and these two can't seem to get away from one another. Let's see whether or not one of them maybe makes a call. Could see Streltsoff maybe try to leapfrog him a little bit. Is up and around. Oh, just ahead of them. That, I think, is Heimbucher. Yeah, so that's Heimbucher going around a lapped car. So already we're seeing these lapped cars become a bit of an issue. And that lapped car was Marc Rondeau, who actually smacked the wall, locking his wheels, coming into turn 12. Thankfully, did not make contact with anybody.
You know, we mentioned a little bit earlier on in this broadcast how the lap traffic was going to be a source of contention, a bit of a trouble spot for many a racer up and down the grid. I think that lap car, maybe Rondeau, it looked like, as they had another slide coming out of the final turn. I just saw them, the corner of my eye, lose control, heading out of the final turn, actually impact the wall. But we said that the lap traffic was going to be a trouble spot and be a source of contention for these racers. With that moment down off into the infield chicane right towards the end of the lap, though, the lap traffic actually being a bit of a thorn in the side for Kellen Heimbucher's cardiologist.
Tell you what, Albuquerque, who we saw pit this past lap, was 23.2 seconds. Another situation where maybe he just didn't tick off his free repair, and that it forced him to take some repairs in the pit lane. Whatever the case, he's going to lose out a little bit to whoever he was racing with, because that's probably a good 8 seconds or so slower than what a normal pit stop should be. This is Ryan Cowley, our leader. Heimbucher just behind him, I'd say may have caught up a little bit from some of the lap traffic we've been watching, so that's worked out well from the 19. I don't remember him being quite this close, even though he's been kind of keeping the 24 honest here. We watched from our leader, looking back at Kellen, and you could see that lapped car. No, excuse me, that's not a lapped car. That's Mason. So that's our top 3, all within 1.5 seconds of one another. This has remained quite close.
Yeah, they've never really shaken each other off, so to speak. It's just been rather close. It's occasionally gone a bit more spread out than this, but I think the lap traffic and with those approaching pit stops coming up, oh, that's going to be a bit tense there. The lap car spinning right in front of your race leaders. They're all going to avoid, and the lap car going to get out of harm's way. But these lap traffic encounters cause these racers to get a little bit closer with the pit stops coming up here soon as well. I'm sure the pace is starting to change for all 3 of these racers running in the podium spots. Can maybe see that Ryan Cowley starting to lose a bit of time when it comes to his laps. Maybe Heimbucher's being a bit more on the consistent end. Maybe Mike Matson's able to turn up the wick as we get to the end of this pit stop. These racers pushing the limits a little bit more as well. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see at least one of them make the call to come down pit lane in the not too far off future, because there's a lot of stuff that's playing at these racers. They're already about halfway into this race. I'm sure the tires are screaming in pain. They're probably running on fumes at this point, depending on how much they started with. And the tension is starting to raise as well. We saw a few laps ago Ryan Cowley weaving, heading down the back straightaway, trying to break the draft. Now, these cars aren't draft monsters, but rather are telling to see the change in attitude up at the front of the field.
I think cool heads will prevail at the end of this race, because that's twice now we've seen the leaders wind up in scary situations with lapped cars up at the front or just hitting the halfway point. Cowley and Heimbucher have got to be hoping we won't see much more of that, and they could just have a straightforward fight between them to the end. We're going to hop on board with Kellen now, looking up at Ryan, get the opposite perspective as he traces the tire tracks of that 24.
As we ride on board with him down off into turn at number 4, I wonder how exactly these drivers are feeling at the present moment. What's the mindset that these racers have? Are they feeling a little bit nervous? Are they maybe feeling a little bit excited for the pit stops that are coming up? Are they maybe feel nervous for those pit stops coming up? The only people who really know what's going through these drivers' minds are the drivers themselves. And one thing that I absolutely adore about the fact that we can see Ryan Cowley as he drives around this track is the fact that you can kind of see the body language develop all throughout this race. We saw him moving around. I'm sure he probably feels very confident about his chances of doing well here, and based off the fact that he's led now past the halfway mark of this race, I'm sure he probably does, even with those pit stops and about half this race still left to go. But I would love to be a fly in the wall of these drivers' sim rigs and just be able to kind of get a feel as to how they're feeling at the present moment, testing the waters as to the drivers' mindsets as we get off into a very crucial part of the race.
And we'd all love to be able to get inside the heads of these drivers for sure. And unfortunately, the only way we're going to get to do that is after the race, if we could pick their brains in an interview. And to do that, they're going to need to finish within the top 3. Looks like we got some nice fun with Mehmet Karachai now. Rex Girawala, rather, at the front of this group. Oh, he's giving a big toe to Jeremy Hall. You could see him try to move to the middle of the track to keep Hall from getting an advantage, but Hall is going to break later, coming down to the apex. Is he going to make the corner? Just about box Girawala, but he is timed it almost perfect. No, he doesn't. He slips wide at the second corner, turning back left, and it looks like Jeremy Hall, against the odds, is going to hold ahead, at least for a brief while. It's another right-hander coming through 4, and now it's side by side coming through the chicane. This rarely works well, and it's going to be Jeremy Hall who backs out, loses not just 1, 2, 3, 4 positions from that mistake.
And look, in the midst of all of that, as they're 3 wide, heading their way down off into turn number 7. Rex Girawala trying to hold on to any single spot that he can, but Mehmet Karachai able to jump his way up into the top 10, just driving past, and you can see the smile on Rex Girawala's face, even though in all that drama, he actually lost out on some spots and lost out on some time. That was good, hard racing between those racers, very respectful. I mean, they were being a bang and roughing each other up, don't get me wrong. 3 wide racing heading down the backstretch into turn number 7. It's outrageous stuff, but here in the PCA, these drivers are racers. They want to put on a good show, and they put on a fantastic show there. I want to give a shout out though to Rex Girawala, because in the midst of all of that, despite the fact he was going side by side all through turn number 1 and 2 in a section where you can really be a bit aggressive, say to your racer that you're going side by side with, you know what, I'm not going to give you the second down, I'm going to box you in there. Girawala gave that car that was on the inside of him off through turn number 2 a rather wide approach. So good, clean, respectful racing from all of those racers, but the way that Rex Girawala handled that battling off through 1 and 2 really stood out to me.
Honestly, for me, it was Karachai getting that 2 for 1 there, making a great move and then outbraking the rest of them coming down into turn 7, which we see here again with Dale Green down to the apex first, just ahead of Chapman as he chops him off into that apex curve. So P7 for the 250 car now. Still waiting for most of them to have their pit stops as we start getting into the range that we may see a few gamblers checking back in now. Just behind them as we get some cars, ahead of them, back up to our leaders is what we've switched to here. Ryan Cowley with Heimbucher, still about 3/10 behind. Matson, though, losing a little touch compared to before. He's about a second behind, but he's actually closer overall to the leader. So it seems like while Heimbucher is running away from him, Matson is also running down Cowley a little bit.
It seems like all of these racers are kind of converging in on each other as they get to the end of this stint with probably about 10 minutes left to go, we would probably say, before everybody makes that call to come down pit lane. We're starting to see the tension build and the pressure rise in this battle for the final podium spots. Will Callie be able to hold on to it until they come down pit lane? Will behind Bucher pouncing on Callie first? There's Mike Matson going to try and pounce in this battle first. And if they start to battle hard, it's definitely a long shot considering it's about 2.2 seconds a gap right now. You look at Jake Gerbino a little bit farther behind, 2.1 seconds. It may seem like a rather comfortable cushion between these top three, and the car's a little bit farther behind. But in really hard battling, and we saw it a few moments ago in that battling a little bit farther down the pack, just barely inside the top 15. In one lap of side-by-side racing at any racetrack, but certainly here at Indianapolis, you can lose out on a whole lot of time. You could lose out on a ton of time, make it feel like you're dragging an anchor through asphalt. So if these racers do converge in on each other and start to battle hard, we could very well turn this 3-car battle into a 4 or maybe even 5-car fight if they let it get a little bit out of hand.
Certainly, you've got to be smart in this situation, and Ryan Cowley up there at the front of it so far has been managing this well. Hasn't allowed Heimbucher to quite get close enough that he needs to worry about too many incidents, but I had said Matson was falling off a little bit. Well, now he's caught up to about half a second behind Heimbucher. He is suddenly in the mix once again. Could maybe try and challenge for that second spot, or will we see him try for that undercut that we keep teasing is a possibility? In behind, that was Gerbino and Streltsov that you can see that also aren't too far away from things like we just heard Ron talking about. We hop on board with Mike Matson. Like you said, a penny for his thoughts. Wonder if he's thinking, let's be aggressive, let's try to get the second spot, or does he work together with Kellen to try and catch Cowley?
Yeah, is teamwork going to make the dream work in this scenario? Pseudo teamwork, because they're not actually teammates. Is that going to be the way that he decides to play this game, or is he going to maybe be a bit more on the selfish end? As we see, not going to have to worry about that. Heimbucher making the call to come down pit lane in the number 19 machine, the farthest up racer we've seen come down pit lane thus far. Enter P2 runner of Heimbucher. That's going to give second place to Mike Matson, and now it's a matter of time before those racers around him come down too. But Heimbucher, this may be a trend-setting stop.
I have to confess, I was not expecting Kellen to be the one to try and make that move back to the 316. Things getting super tight here at the end of the lap. Jarawala versus Foley for 11th position, which is soon going to be a top 10 as Heimbucher gets ready to take his pit stop just beside them on this main straight down towards the braking. It looks like Jarawala might be under threat as Foley pops his nose out coming towards the first turn, but Jarawala outbrakes him.
As we see these racers continue to duke it out, I was looking a little bit farther behind, I'll be honest, just to see what sort of cushion Heimbucher is going to find himself in when he comes out of the pits. That's a spinner a little bit farther up the road. That's Karache going off the track through turn number 4. A disastrous mistake for the driver that came out of all that battling. Smelled like a bed of roses, only a handful of laps to go. He's now going to smell like a gravel trap as he rejoins the racetrack well farther back from where he was. As look at this, kind of shapes big time, really frenetic racing in this battling for the final 2 spots inside of the top 10. Jarawala and Foley have been duking it out for quite some time. You look at Jeremy Hall in the midst of all this battling as well, and I wonder if it is all possible, yeah, to see the replay of that moment. Such a costly mistake from him all through turn number 4. That turn's so tough to try and nail down. Turning through the braking zone and shipping your way all through there can be rather tough in these Porsche Cup cars. Unfortunately for him, the one mistake he makes is a costly one.
I was kind of surprised. We didn't quite see it, but he pulled forward and turned to the right. I don't know if he lost track of where he was exactly, but the track needed to go to his left, and he probably could have gotten going a little bit earlier, but he then had to back up and try again, which actually brought more gravel onto the car, onto the tires, and of course onto the track as well. So don't go wide at turn 4. It is going to be a mess out there, and you're going to severely lack grip. So while Jarawala continues to lead this group before this starts to erupt, we want to give another shout out to Princess Cruises. They are the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. And just like that, Jarawala continues to lead on in ninth, up 23 spots. Now, a couple of those are from drivers who have pitted. Kellen Heimbucher is one. I think Abu Haka might wind up in front of him, but that's going to be questionable. Same thing with Scott Bowers, who is behind Abu Haka. All three of those drivers should be good to go to the finish from here. Oh, and is this... Well, we got a car that is slow in front of them, but we switched over to a battle down into turn one. That is Gerbino just ahead of Streltsov, and I think... Yeah, that was the order they were in. So Gerbino remains in what is now third, was what's fourth before. But Ron, we come back to Jarawala, Foley, Hall. They just won't let us look away.
Yeah, I did mention a little bit earlier on in this show, as I'm going to hold off on that point. Here's Foley going down the inside of Jarawala, maybe burning up those tires a little bit, but Jarawala just able to maintain dominance on that high side all through 1 and 2. Now Foley feeling some pressure from Hall as well. In this battling, Jarawala has put on the defensive masterclass thus far to hold on to that spot. He cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. This track is hot. I have no doubts that that's where he probably got the heat from for that knife to cut through that butter. He's been on the charge all throughout this race, but his tires are probably searing at the moment. That is a big disaster. Mark Foley sliding down. He narrowly avoids Rex Jarawala, and that is going to end in disaster. That's Jeremy Hall, my apologies. In the midst of all that, it was himself and Mark Foley chasing each other's tail down to 7 that leads to that happening in the first place.
So he saw Foley's outbreaking of himself coming down into turn one and decided to one-up him a little bit. Thankfully, nobody was there to run into, but just by a couple feet, as Jarawala, no doubt, was a little bit scared by suddenly seeing that flash across the front of his car. So thank goodness we came away from that one. Speaking of, Foley's off track. I thought he was pitting in. He has had an accident at pit entry. For some reason, I'm not sure why, as we get one more angle there of the crazy incident there with Jeremy Hall.
Yeah, quick little spin heading down into the pit entry. It's a rather awkward pit entry, frankly. It's on the outside of the second to last turn. You gotta carry a little bit more speed in there than you usually have in mind, but it's such a small little bit of asphalt that you're aiming for. That pit entry road is narrow. It is small, minuscule even. You're not aiming for a lot of racetrack as you head your way off in there. So trying to master the run onto the pit entry can be about as important as trying to master the rest of the racetrack. It is rather awkward, so to speak, especially in these Porsche Cup cars, which are certainly on the bigger end on iRacing.
So that's going to be very, very costly for the 316, as we got, Greg Streltsov. Okay, another big runner up at the front is in, and looks to try and hit his marks as he attacks the cone, so he's making the most of this. Gerbino carries on, and so does Barnett and Dale Green behind him. We also got the 14 in there. That's Christian Braun. He is a lap down. Starting to see the dominoes fall here as the 24 was not being under attack. That was Mark Foley coming out. That's how much time he lost. He has now been lapped by the leaders and is trying to stay out of their way so he doesn't play a factor in this, but he is definitely causing some woe with our second place driver of Mike Matson. He's now finally through, but the damage has been done.
Yeah, and once again, we've mentioned it all throughout this show, but it's such an important point that we're going to be talking about from the start all the way through to the end. The lap traffic, once again, playing a big factor in this race here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. That infield section can be narrow at certain points in time, so dealing with that lap traffic can be both a matter of skill and really a matter of luck at many points in time as well. But these front two, rather surprising that they have stayed out as long as they have compared to the driver around them. We saw Heimbecker make that call to come down pit lane a matter of also, it was probably about 3 laps ago that we saw that racer come into the pits, and the last time that I saw, they were involved in their own little scrap, that being Heimbecker, who came into the pits from P2 in this race, is currently in P15, was able to get past Mehmet Karache. Karache is actually pretty much put right in front of Heimbecker following the spin from Karache off through turn number 2, as that's another driver making a call to come down pit lane right in front of Charlie Ferry, who we run on board with. But thankfully, 4-year at one point P2 runner of Heimbecker, he came out of the pits and didn't have to worry about battling too much. He did have to worry about it slightly, but it could have been a heck of a lot worse.
All right, 222, who definitely got sent backwards a little bit. Remember, he had some contact at the start, finally taking his pit stop. Heimbecker up the highest of anybody who's pitted. No surprises there with him coming in from second place. He's to 14th, but has mostly had clear air in front of him. So that's the good news. If he can keep that up, he could maybe make some inroads here in trying to challenge those top runners. But will we see any of those top runners follow him into pit lane? Because we're getting towards the end. Indeed, we will. There goes Ryan Cowley. Matson, though, able to stay out another lap.
Rather fascinating. I wonder if Matson just spending all of this early stage of the race down behind the 2 drivers right in front of him, if he's just been able to maximize the fuel saving all throughout this race, and if that may be what makes or breaks this battle. Not a large gap between himself and Cowley at the time of Cowley making this call to come down pit lane. So if Matson can pull it off on strategy and strategy alone, I haven't really talked about it. We've mentioned the strategy being important, but we haven't mentioned an overtake through the pit stops, trying to run a different strategy, put a heck of a lot less fuel in there because you need a heck of a lot less fuel. That may be the call that the number 8 car of Mike Matson is trying to make here. And hey, if that's a basket that he's putting all the ships in, I think that is a very good call from him.
I can tell you that Matson's already coming towards the end of the lap. That's how short the lap is around here as Cowley is now emerging. Is he emerging into clean air? So far, it is looking pretty good. Couple cars in front of him, and it's going to be Christian Braun slightly in the way, but he should be moving out of the way pretty soon. And Heimbecker will emerge, it looks like 1.8 seconds back. So the ploy did not work. The yellow and blue car remains in second, but again, nothing gambled, nothing lost, I suppose, as now we get Matson down pit lane.
Yeah, just to briefly touch on the Cowley-Heimbecker situation, I wonder if Heimbecker being stuck, for lack of a better term, behind the number 78 car of Mehmet Karache not too long ago, I wonder if that could have potentially affected the gap between those two. But regardless, Heimbecker, it's not an insurmountable gap with 12 minutes left to go in this race, but it will sting ever so slightly as we keep an eye on this battling a little bit farther behind those racers that I just mentioned. That's Richard Woodruff in the midst of all of that battling, currently running in P13. The top 4 all making that call to come into the pits as we have side-by-side racing down to turn number 12. We've got battling, we've got pit stops, we've got everything going on at the present moments.
I'm not sure how much longer we could go without pit stops. I did see Charlie Ferrer continue, so he's going to be scored as our new leader this time by. But surely he's not going to be able to go much farther than this as Woodruff is in. And I'm not sure. Okay, Chris Sherburne is able to carry on. I don't think there's many more drivers. Karache as well. And that might about be it. Indeed, 3 cars able to make it almost 50 minutes out here.
That is astonishing, both from a fuel perspective and a tire standpoint. These racers not going to be swapping tires in the stops, but that small little time that they run down pit lane is a bit of a reprieve for both the tires and the racers alike. So that is a rather astonishing first stint to put in, nearly 50 minutes long. But those racers do have to come down pit lane at some point in time, and probably going to see them come in very shortly.
This could be significant right here. Depending on if they get caught up, because Charlie Fair, that is our leader, but Ryan Cowley, oh, excuse me, I thought that was Cowley in behind them. My apologies. I thought that our leaders were catching this group. Fair keeps going, and so does Sherburne. How in the world are they able to keep on at this? I mean, I know they're close to being caught by the leaders, but this is amazing fuel saving.
Those, slightly dark blue mirrors on the side of that number 28 car, they've got a double of solar panels. This is insane stuff that we're seeing from Charlie Fair, holding on to that race lead lap after lap and holding on to this stint presently. I feel like this is how it's probably gonna go, Joe. We're gonna say, okay, Shirley has to come down pit lane this time by, and then he's got to stay out for another lap. Eventually, the lap that we don't say it is going to be the lap that he comes down pit lane. That's usually how it's going to run.
Well, I'm just going to keep saying it then, and he'll make it all the way to the finish without a pit stop somehow. But 10 minutes
surely
left to
can't
go.
Be serious.
No, I don't think he's able to do that. Karchai did throw up the white flag on that one. He did not have enough fuel to keep going, and he did enter into pit lane. Cowley a little bit too far back to catch up to these drivers, but that is a lapped car. Robert Neville in behind them, so that's not for position, but it is for position between Sherburne and Fair. It just won't be for the lead much longer. As this time, let's say it again, surely they cannot pass another time through as the bright green car of Charlie Fair. Well, there you go. You proved your point. As both of them keep going.
Surely you can't be serious. Well, yes, I am serious, and stop calling me Shirley.
This is bizarre.
It is insane. I mean, both of the cars have blue on them, so I wonder if it is. Oh, it's Mike Matson. I think he's had a spin coming out of the second to last corner there. You can see a lot of smoke as they head their way off through turn number 13, and Matson losing out on a bit of time. He is now about 2.5 seconds back of Kellen Heimbecker. But no, these front two cars of Chris Sherburne and Charlie Fair, they both have a little bit of blue on their race car. It's got to be solar panels, because, I mean, unless they're just... They've pulled off a smoky unit and the fuel line has been wrapped around the car about 16 times. This is insane fuel mileage that they're getting. I'm just going to talk about the fuel mileage. I'm not going to make any predictions because I want to see if I can prove my point here, but they're still out there on the racetrack, still running at a rather moderate speed. I mean, a matter of 2 laps ago, the gap between themselves and Ryan Cowley was at about 10.1 seconds. It's only at 9.5, so it's not like they're running around at a snail's pace either.
Yeah, and that's what I wondered if maybe they were trying to conserve things from the very beginning. I don't see you saving numerous laps to be able to extend it to the finish. They're coming up to that pit entry. Surely they have to come in, and finally it sticks, and both of them will pit, and the lead will be handed over to Ryan Cowley. But Heimbecker, because of Matson's slip-up, was able to take away what is now going to be second place. The 19 going to be smiling ear to ear thanks to that one.
Yeah, unfortunate there from Matson. We thought he had it made with that call to come down pit lane, but unfortunately for him, that spin going to cost him. I mean, he still holds on to a P3, which not exactly a bad finishing position. And it won't be like he's going to be feeling pressure all the way through to the end either, with a fairly comfortable gap between himself and your current P4 runner, Jake Turbino. But Mike Matson may be going to leave this race feeling a little bit... not really sure the best way I can sum it up, really, like a slightly bitter taste in his mouth. It's still going to be a podium at the end of it all, but was maybe thinking that this race could have been a bit more. This season is short here, only 7 races in the Porsche Club of America all throughout this season, so you don't have a lot of opportunities, you don't have a lot of chances to really make a statement, so you got to capitalize on every single opportunity that you have.
See Greg Streltsov taking some fuel here. There's some arguing and bickering on the radio for some reason. I can't make out what it is for. But now that, and this might be what it is involved with and why we see that 22 car down in pit lane. No wonder there is so much frustration. I think we've lost right now from this race as he's retired. Well, it's not just the track temperatures heating up, but also the tempers by the end of this. And when that heat and that sun is relentless, your sunscreen should be too. Mo Handsome's new sports sunscreen spray is now available. It's SPF 30, broad spectrum, and reef safe. Plus, this spray is water resistant for up to 80 minutes. It's even TSA travel sized and made in the USA. This protecting spray is perfect for 120-degree Indy track surfaces. And to prove it, tonight's highest climber will also receive a 2-pack of Mo Handsome Sports Sunscreen Spray. Learn more at their Instagram, @MoHandsomeSkin, and their website, mohandsome.com/sunscreen. Right now, the driver that looks like he might be taking that home, Rex Jarawala, but he's got some real competition for it. Charlie Ferrer's up 19, and Chris Sherburne is up 21. My goodness, were there some hard chargers.
Yeah, I've said this a lot throughout the show, and I'll say it once again. Many a racer cutting their way through the field like a hot knife through butter. It's been a tough race for these competitors from the drop of the green all the way through to the fall of the checkered, coming up in about 4.5 minutes time. But these racers have coped with the challenge rather well, despite occasional points of drama, occasional points of frustration, and the temper certainly flaring as we get to the end of this race. I think all of these racers have put on a very good show thus far here tonight. They've coped with the challenge brilliantly. They've put on a pretty darn good race here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, and with only 4 minutes left to go, we have still got some battles and a heck of a lot of storylines to talk about, as about halfway through the next round of the championship at Laguna Seca in 2 weeks' time, we will be officially halfway through this Porsche Club of America season. So these racers are already having to worry about the championship points leaving this round here at Indy.
Indeed, every point will matter. You talked about there's only 7 events. Only 6 of them count, remember, because we do have those drop weeks. Help save those that have a bad time or have to miss an event. Jarawala still giving us some tension here at the end. Not only is he trying to lose some spots to hold on to that highest climber with Scott Bowers in behind, but Dennis Lin ahead of him offers another chance for another pass, along with Albuhaca there in the pink machine that could also be an opportunity to pass depending on the pace that he has. In fact, look at this. Dennis Lin suddenly under serious threat.
As you can see, riding on board with these racers, Rex Jarawala, he's been able to put on a very good charge. And, despite the fact that I voiced a little bit of concern earlier on in this broadcast discussing how Jarawala was maybe putting a bit more of a load on those tires, he's coped with the challenge brilliantly thus far, holds on to the final spot inside the top 10, and there's room to grow from there. You look at Dennis Lin running right in front, punching that hole in the air, and you look at Nathan Albuhaca. It may be a little bit out of reach to get past the driver of the 958 machine, but that 124 car of Dennis Lin, that is certainly not out of the question for Rex Jarawala to get this move done. Certainly the prize on offer rather good. You see that red roof of a building on the interior? That's what my skin would look like if I don't use sunscreen. So very nice to see that sponsorship here. But Rex Jarawala trying to put in a good performance. Not only is the prize fantastic, it also proves that he's a good racer. Has proved that in the battling up to this point, and has certainly proved that as well with the brilliant charge up to the front of the field.
You can see a lot of diving around down the main straight. That is because it's coming down to it. 2 laps to go for these drivers as they come into turn 1 once again. Does seem like one of the stronger points of the track that we've seen for Jarawala now twice, 2 laps in a row, is under braking into that first apex, gets so close to the rear bumper of that car ahead. Can he manage to dislodge Dennis Lin the next time around? That might be his best chance.
Yeah, this may be a good opportunity. Running out of time, but there are still some opportunities left for him to get this move done. We got some heavy braking zones around this racetrack, and of course, if you try and pressure that driver into a mistake on tires that are probably hanging on by their last thread, yeah, you can certainly do that here, and there are plenty of turns where a small little mistake can spell disaster for you. 14 turns in all around this circuit, and pretty much every single one of them can lend itself to having a really heart-wrenching mistake. As we are on the white flag lap, Ryan Cowley trying to get 2 wins in a row to get this season up and rolling, and firmly cement himself as a driver to keep an eye on for here in this 14th season of the PCA Sim Racing Club class here. These racers are looking to try and strike while the iron is hot, and while that timer is still running down, there's still some spots and still some glory left to be gained.
Lynn again going defensive initially, feels safe enough. He comes back to the racing line. It's not going to happen in turn 1 between himself and Jarawala. Abu Haka also has to avoid any mistakes here late in the race. That is not for position ahead of Nathan that we're seeing. That could be some lapped cars that may play a part in this, but up at the very front of the field, like you said, Ryan Cowley has managed this one, but it's not over yet. Look at Heimbecker in behind him. We saw a change for the win right at the end because of fuel last night. Hopefully we don't get a repeat of that, although it's looking awful close here as Cowley leaves the door a little bit open. Coming through turn 13, on to 14. Does he have enough to get to the end? It looks like he does, and Ryan Cowley will go back-to-back in the second and third rounds of Series 14.
What a drive. And you can tell as soon as he crossed that line, the nerves just washing out of him. I'm sure he was terrified at the end of that race, seeing that number 19 car slowly but surely hove him in. But what a drive from Ryan Cowley here to get win number 2.
And look at this. These lapped cars were having a bit of trouble coming through 12 and 13. They're trying to pull out of the way of this fight. Abu Haka is going to be able to get ahead. Oh, no, Jarawala. Jarawala slips up, and Bowers is going to be able to sneak through. How many positions will he lose because of this one mistake? And he's not going to be getting some sunscreen, I believe, after that one, as he is tied on 20 positions gained. It is Chris Sherburne who picks him up and puts himself in a 22nd right at the very end.
Unfortunately there, another moment off through turn number 14, burning up the tires on corner exit, and sadly with that moment heading through the final turn, Rex Jarawala going to be just as burnt as his tires were at the end of the race. Such an unfortunate moment, but an easy mistake to make, to be sure, heading around the final turn.
We're going to see 24 cars manage to bring home the full count of laps today in the end, with Robert Neville being the last of them to get across the line. We still got an exciting finish here, even though it wasn't for the win like we saw last night. Ryan Cowley, though, making us a bit nervous there right at the checkered flag, as he's only 2 tenths ahead, just under 3 tenths ahead for the win over Heimbecker, who finishes second. Matson will claim a solid third place, but even after his slip-up, it looks like he did not have the pace to hold back Kellen. Jake Gerbino gets a nice fourth, as Jason Barnett was fifth and Dale Green sixth, Dean Chapman P7. Abu Haka came out ahead of that big group of cars in eighth, with Dennis Lynn in ninth and Scott Bowers getting one position right at the very end to get himself top 10. Charlie Farrer was 11th, Rex Jarawala dropping multiple spots to the line, and you could see the consternation as he rubbed his forehead there for a 12th place at the end. Chris Sherburne was 13th, and Chad Casey on P14. David Snelling with a bit of a quiet 15th today. Peter Sigourney recovered back to 16th in the end. Jeremy Hall, P17, and Andy Jackson, 18th. Mehmet Karachai, a mistake-laden day in that 78 to finish 19th, and John Gibson was your 20th place finisher. After that, it's J.R. Gregory 21st with Richard Woodruff 22nd. Peter Krumer is going to be P23, and Robert Neville in 24th. Last on the lead lap, Mark Foley having to settle for 25th after he started so strong in this race. Anthony Carbone Jr. 26th, and Patrick Adamczyk 27th, with Devin Hopkins 28th, Kenneth Eskridge 29th, and Christian Braun finishing in 30th position. Aaron Sunday was 31st, and Steve Comat's 32nd. From there, drivers run into some more trouble. Doran was 2 laps down in 33rd. Strutzoff was 4 laps down, I believe, a DNF, with Schultz 35th, Eunice 36th, and Rondeau also a DNF in this race. Do believe we've got a chance to chat with Ryan Cowley after that one. and I would like to know his thoughts on the finish because, Ryan, it looked like Kellen Heimbecker was getting awful close at the end. Last night, we saw a change for the lead right at the very end due to fuel. Were you tight?
That's exactly what I was looking at, too. Like, he was closing that gap, and I finished with about a half a gallon of fuel, so we took, just enough. I was really grateful to see that checker. I didn't know if we're going to hit the time and have to go an extra lap.
I'm sure you're glad that you did not have to do that. How was the track itself? The temperatures have been such a big talking point coming into these 2 weeks. Now that you've run through the storm, what's your assessment?
Man, I spent hours and hours trying to get this car comfortable for me this week. I watched Chris Pye's track walk, and everybody's slow down for us, and that's what I was thinking because there's such long straightaways, 2 of them, but I could not get comfortable. So I got a high downforce setup. I had 14 wing on there, just so I could drive off the corners, and I think you could really see it. Those guys were catching me just a little bit on the straights, but through the twisty stuff, I had a lot of drive off, and that's kind of where I took advantage to pull that gap.
Fascinating, sort of the old school Red Bull method there, but that gives you 2 wins out of the first 3 races. That's got to be encouraging for you to start the Series 14 in that fashion.
Well, that feels good, but there's a lot of fast guys out there, and I know each week they're just getting hungrier and hungrier. So I got my rearview mirror on extra large.
I can understand why. Congratulations on the win this week.
Thanks, guys.
That was Ryan Cowley, your victor in the end, as he was followed home very closely by Kellen Heimbecker, and I do believe Ron has caught up with him.
Yeah, and Kellen Heimbecker now joining us here in the broadcast booth. Kellen, welcome in. It's P2 for you, a very close P2 at the end of this race here at Indy. How was it out there, especially towards the end?
These hot temps made it really greasy, very challenging. Before I get into any details, I definitely want to thank Princess Cruises and PCA and all the folks that helped put this stuff on together. Race Control, all you guys are awesome. It makes for a really fun time.
Yeah, now I want to ask you both about that race, because it looked like a pretty hectic one where you didn't really have a point to breathe at all, even after the pit stop, and especially the end of the race and that very tense finish between yourself and Ryan Cowley. How was it out there at Indy?
It was definitely challenging. Mike was coming on me strong. I couldn't break the draft from him very well, so I decided to take a pretty early pit, hoping that would work out. Didn't work out exactly how I wanted. Came out, ended up in 3rd, back behind Mike, and unfortunately he had a little bit of a slide that put him behind me. I was looking forward to racing him, and it was full gas the whole race, no rest.
Yeah, it looked like a rather flat-out night of racing action from the start to the finish. I want to ask you about this racetrack and how you find it to be in terms of running around here, because this track really unlike any other.
I think this probably gave me the most challenge so far, just between the temps, a couple off-camber corners, high speeds. It has an interesting mix.
Yeah, it certainly looks like a very challenging racetrack out there. I know from my experience running around here, it can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Well, we've got another challenging racetracks to look forward to in just 2 weeks' time. Laguna Seca for the next round of the season. What are your thoughts heading there?
I am very much looking forward to it, and I am going to be practice, just like this race, and hopefully get another chance to battle with some of these other top folks.
Yeah, what can you say? Practice makes perfect, and it'd certainly be the case for you next time at Laguna Seca. Callum, thank you for joining us here in the booth, and congratulations on P2.
Thank you guys so much.
And that right there was Kellen Heimbecker.
Looks like we've got Mike Matson also ready to talk to us, coming home with a 3rd place, although for some periods he was running P2 today. Mike, you had a slip up towards the end. You let Kellen through. He finished 6.4 seconds ahead of you, but if you didn't have that slip up, do you think you could have held him behind?
I don't know. It would have been tough. I was watching them get closer and closer. So it would have been interesting to see, but I guess I'm a little skeptical I would have been able to anyway.
Well, I've been kind of coming up with a theory after watching these first two races that it feels like the tires have the grip in the first couple laps to try and make moves, and after that, they're just too slippery to try and get some dive bombs in there. Is that the case? Do you kind of have to get those positions early in the race?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. My tires were definitely giving out, and I think that's part of what caused my little traction loss there.
That makes sense as to why maybe the car just whipped around on you, and that is a tricky set of corners there at the very end. Now that we are past Indianapolis, though, are you looking forward to Laguna Seca with it maybe a slightly cooler temperatures?
Yeah, definitely. For this race, I wasn't exactly sure what the track temperature was going to be. So I was practicing with the track at like 65 degrees Celsius. But I think in the end, that actually helped me with this one. But Laguna Seca, I love the track. It should be very interesting. It's a bit treacherous at times, though, in some of those corners, especially the corkscrew.
Yeah, it's a technical track without a doubt. Again, congratulations. Top three won't hurt you too badly. So enjoy the points, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks a lot.
Mike Batson, P3, spraying some champagne today, which is going to wrap up our interviews. And since we're on the topic of 2 weeks from now, there you go. Tune in, because Laguna Seca is coming on October 16th here for event number 4 in Series 14. And we'll, of course, be back with some more Indianapolis, even though we're done this week with it. Join us next Wednesday night, October 8th, for the Sport Class. Big thanks to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team tonight for Hugo and Ron. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Joe Peak, and until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.